All right, welcome back to the deep dive. So for this one, we're uh, we're pointing the compass north, and I don't mean just a little bit north,
No, we're going way up.
all the way up to Anchorage, Alaska.
Yeah.
But we're not there for the beautiful scenery or the northern lights.
Or the Iditarod. No.
We are basically stepping into a time machine,
Yeah.
and we're setting the dial for a very specific and I think very volatile era. We're talking the 1970s and early 80s.
It is the perfect setting for the story we're about to unpack. You really have to understand the whole atmosphere of Anchorage in that window of time.
Right.
This was the era of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. It was, I mean, it was an absolute boom town.
The money everywhere.
Money was flowing like water. People were just flooding in from the lower 48. And there was this palpable sense of chaotic energy. It was a place where you could go to get rich or to get lost or to just completely reinvent yourself.
And that idea, reinvention, that's really the anchor for this whole thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because if you were walking down the street in Anchorage back then, you might have bumped into this guy, a guy named Bob. And Bob was, the picture of the Alaskan dream. He was a family man, married, 2 kids.
And he owned a local business, a bakery, which was, a staple of the community.
A baker.
By all surface metrics, he was a pillar of that society. He was described as mild-mannered, soft-spoken, maybe a little socially awkward, but, generally well-liked by his neighbors.
And he was this incredible outdoorsman.
Oh, fiercely dedicated. He held multiple world records with the Pope and Young Club for bow hunting. This was the guy you'd ask for tips on, tracking doll sheep or where the best fishing spots were.
Right, Bob the baker.
Yeah.
That was the whole persona.
Yeah.
But the reason we're here today, the reason for this deep dive is the terrifying reality that lived just underneath that apron. We're talking about Robert Hansen, the man who would eventually be known not as the baker, but as the butcher baker.
And that nickname, as gruesome as it is, it really only just scratches the surface. We're looking at one of the most prolific serial killers in the history of the United States, and without a doubt, the darkest chapter in Alaska's history.
I mean, the numbers are just staggering.
Hansen confessed to murdering 17 women, but the authorities, and all the evidence we're going to look at, they suggest the true number is likely much higher, possibly into the 30s.
What really gets me looking through the source material for this case is the method. It's
Right.
not just that he killed, it's how he did it. It feels like something a screenwriter would invent for a horror movie, but this was real.
It was very real.
We're talking about a modus operandi that involved a private airplane, the vast, empty wilderness of Alaska, and a literal hunt.
It's uniquely horrifying, and we're going to unpack the psychology of a man who was, professionally diagnosed as having an infantile personality, yet he had the cunning to evade capture for more than a decade.
And he was doing it all in plain sight.
Right in plain sight, using the rugged nature of Alaska as both a weapon and a shield.
We have a massive amount of ground to cover here. We're going to go all the way back to his roots in Iowa to see where the cracks really began to form.
And we have to talk about the truly shocking judicial failures. And I mean shocking. The times he was let go when he should have been put away for years.
Absolutely. And then there's the incredible survival story of Cindy Paulson, the teenage girl who finally brought him down.
And the investigation itself is fascinating, especially the role of criminal profiling. This case is basically a masterclass in behavioral science. You have a profile from the FBI that was so accurate it practically gave the detectives the guy's home address.
It's one of those real truth is stranger than fiction moments. So, okay, let's start at the beginning. Before the bakery, before the pilot's license, before any of the murders,
We have to go back to Iowa.
we need to look at Robert Christian Hansen, born February 15th, 1939, in Estherville, Iowa. When you look at the early reports, the biographical data, the trajectory seems to be set so early on.
It really does. We always look for the why in these deep dives, right? Trying to find the seed of the pathology. With Hansen, the environment he grew up in was rigid.
To say the least.
He was the son of a Danish immigrant baker, Christian Hansen. And the records describe the father as domineering, a very strict kind of old world disciplinarian.
And Robert himself, he didn't exactly fit in with the rough and tumble boys of rural Iowa in the 40s and 50s.
Oh, far from it. He was at a disadvantage from day one, physically and socially. He was described as painfully shy.
And he had the stutter.
A severe stutter, which made any communication a source of constant anxiety for him. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he hits adolescence and develops a severe cystic acne that left his face permanently scarred.
We've seen this kind of narrative before in other profiles we've looked at. That combination of a really domineering father and intense social isolation at school just creates a pressure cooker.
It's a textbook example. He was the classic outcast. The sources describe this deep, festering sense of rejection, especially from women. He couldn't talk to girls without stuttering. He felt ugly because of the scars.
He was just a quiet loner who felt like the whole world was laughing at him.
Exactly. And when a young man feels completely powerless in all his social interactions, he's often going to seek out a domain where he can exert absolute power.
And for Robert Hansen, that domain was the woods.
Precisely. He turned to hunting and archery not just as a hobby, but as a refuge.
A total escape.
Think about the psychology of that. In the woods, he didn't need to speak, so his stutter didn't matter. The animals didn't care about his acne scars. In the woods, he was the master of the situation.
He became obsessed with it, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he got really, really good at it.
Yeah.
This wasn't just some casual weekend thing for him.
No, he practiced incessantly. And this is such a crucial insight for anyone listening. He established this pattern very early on of finding his self-worth and his sense of control through the act of stalking and killing. It was the one place he succeeded.
The one place he felt powerful.
The one place where he could dictate whether another living thing lived or died. And that transfer of power from feeling helpless in high school to feeling godlike in the forest, that is the foundation for everything that comes later.
It's a coping mechanism that just curdled into something incredibly dangerous. And we know it wasn't just, teenage angst because we have the clinical data from his early adulthood.
Right. During an early incarceration, which we'll get to in a second, he was diagnosed with manic depression, what we'd now call bipolar disorder. There were also notes about periodic schizophrenic episodes.
But there was another diagnosis that really stands out. The one that, to me, explains the butcher baker.
The infantile personality.
Exactly. Let's unpack that term because it sounds almost contradictory for a guy who's capable of such organized, calculated violence.
It's all about emotional maturity, or in his case, the complete lack of it. It suggests a person who processes the world like a toddler, entirely egocentric, totally unable to handle frustration.
And prone to these huge rages when they don't get what they want.
Disproportionate rage, exactly. The psychiatrist who examined him noted he had an obsession with getting back at people who he felt had wronged him.
So if a girl in school rejected him, he didn't just feel sad or embarrassed. He felt this burning need for vengeance.
Exactly right. He couldn't process rejection as a normal part of life. To him, it was a personal attack that required a counterattack. And we see this manifest violently for the very first time in 1960.
This was the arson incident.
Yes. He's 21 years old at this point. He burns down the Pocahontas County Board of Education's school bus garage.
A school bus garage. I mean, that is such a specific, symbolic target.
It was explicit revenge. He told the authorities he did it because he felt he'd been mistreated in high school. Think about that. He's 21, technically an adult, but he is still stewing over high school grudges so much that he commits a major felony.
That perfectly illustrates that infantile obsession with revenge.
It really does. He was arrested for that and got a 3-year sentence. He ended up serving 20 months. And you would hope that, prison time would be a wake-up call, but it seems like it just hardened him.
It was just a pause, not a stop.
It's a good way to put it. After he got out, he had a string of run-ins for petty theft. His first wife divorced him while he was locked up, which, likely just poured gasoline on that fire of resentment toward women.
But the real turning point, the moment the trajectory shifts toward the serial killer we know, that's in 1967.
That's the move to Alaska.
Right. He marries his second wife, a woman he met after his release, and they head north. And you have to remember what we said about Anchorage in the late 60s.
It was the perfect place for a guy with a record to just disappear into the crowd, a clean slate.
And for a while, it seemed like he did it. He made it. He opens the bakery. He starts racking up those hunting records. He's getting featured in the local newspapers for his archery skills.
He's building the mask.
He's building that Bob the Baker mask, piece by piece.
It's the classic mask of sanity. On the surface, he looked like a hyper-productive member of society. But the geography of Alaska didn't cure his pathology. It just gave him a bigger, wilder playground. The old resentments were all still there, just bubbling under the surface.
And this is where the story becomes so incredibly frustrating. I think for our listeners, this next section is it's going to be the hardest to hear because it really highlights how preventable these murders were.
Oh, absolutely.
Before the killing started in earnest, there were these massive flashing red flags. We're talking about the period between 1971 and 1976.
This section of the timeline is just a scathing indictment of the judicial system of that era. In December 1971, Hansen was arrested twice. And we're not talking about, stealing a candy bar.
Okay, let's break down those two incidents.
The first one involved him abducting a housewife. He held her at gunpoint. He attempted to rape her. I mean, that is a violent, predatory felony. There's no gray area there.
And the second one, in the same month.
The second incident involved the rape of a sex worker. He was picked up and charged for both of these crimes.
So you have a guy with a known history of arson and theft. Now he's arrested for abduction, attempted rape, and rape. In any logical world, this man goes to prison for a long, long time. 10, 20 years.
In a logical world, yes. But here's what actually happened. He pleaded no contest to assault with a deadly weapon for the abduction.
Okay.
And the rape charge involving the sex worker, it was dropped completely as part of a plea bargain.
Completely.
Gone. And for the assault charge, the one he pleaded no contest to, he was sentenced to 5 years. But, and this is the part that just hurts to even say, he served only 6 months.
6? Wait, 6 months?
6 months. And it wasn't even, a hard time. He was put on a work release program.
6 months? He abducted a woman at gunpoint, and he served less time than a school year. How does that even happen?
It was a perfect storm of things. Overcrowded prisons, for one. A kind of frontier justice mentality that sometimes prioritized second chances for, hardworking family men.
And let's be honest, a deep bias against the victims.
A huge bias. The court looked at Robert Hansen and they saw Bob the baker. They saw a businessman, a neighbor. They did not see the monster, so they minimized the threat he posed.
It's terrifying. He basically learned a lesson from this, and the lesson was, I can attack women and get a slap on the wrist.
It absolutely emboldened him. And then you fast forward to 1976, and he gets caught stealing a chainsaw from a Fred Meyer store.
A pretty petty crime compared to the violence, but still.
Right. And he gets sentenced to 5 years for larceny. The court even orders him to get psychiatric treatment, so they recognize something is deeply wrong with this guy. But the Alaska Supreme Court reviews the case, and they reduce his sentence. He's released for time served.
So again and again, the system had him in its grip, and again, it just let him go.
And authorities now believe the murders began right in the middle of all this leniency, around 1972. While the courts were letting him out on work release, he was very likely already killing.
He realized that if he was careful, if he picked the right victims, nobody was going to stop him.
Which brings us to the modus operandi, because once he realized he could get away with it, he escalated from these, crimes of opportunity to a highly ritualized, horrifying system.
This is where the plane comes in.
A pilot's license, yeah.
Yeah.
Hansen owned a Piper PA-18 Super Cub. Now, for any aviation geeks listening, the Super Cub is a legendary bush plane. It's small, it's got a powerful engine for its weight.
And most importantly, it can land almost anywhere.
Exactly. It has these high-lift wings and big, fat Tundra tires. It can take off and land on a dime. You don't need a runway. You just need a gravel bar, a frozen lake, a patch of flat ground.
Which means he had access to parts of Alaska that were completely, totally inaccessible to police cruisers or any regular vehicle.
Precisely. He used the plane to create this huge disconnect between the abduction site and the eventual crime scene. He would target women in Anchorage, usually sex workers, dancers, transients.
Women he felt society wouldn't miss, or at least wouldn't miss immediately.
That was the calculation. He would stalk them, learn their movements, and then abduct them at gunpoint, usually forcing them into his car first.
But he didn't just take them to a basement, though we know he did torture victims in his home sometimes.
Yeah.
The end game was always the wilderness.
Always. He would drive them to Merrill Field or another small airstrip, load them into the Super Cub, and fly them out to the Nick River Valley or the Matanuska-Susitna Valley. These vast, empty places.
I mean, try to put yourself in the victim's shoes for just a second. You've been abducted. You're in this tiny, noisy plane. You look out the window and all you see are mountains, glaciers, and just endless forest. You know that even if you land, there's absolutely nowhere to run.
That psychological terror was a huge part of his gratification. He was isolating them completely from the world, and once he landed on some remote gravel bar or a secluded strip, that's when the game would begin.
He didn't just execute them.
No. He would strip them naked or partially naked, and he would tell them to run.
He turned it into a sport.
He hunted them. He used a Ruger Mini 14. It's a .223 caliber semi-automatic rifle. It's a serious weapon, lightweight, reliable, high capacity. It's often used for hunting small game or varmints.
And that's what he saw them as.
He treated these women exactly like the animals he tracked for sport. He'd give them a head start, and then he would track them down and shoot them.
It's the ultimate expression of that infantile need for control. I am the hunter, you are the prey. There's no ambiguity there.
It is the most dangerous game.
All right.
It satisfied every single dark impulse he had, the deep resentment of women, the desire for total dominance, and the thrill of the hunt that he was so good at.
And because of where he did it, the evidence was just swallowed by the wilderness.
Swallowed up. Scavengers, bears, wolves, eagles, they would destroy the remains very quickly. The harsh weather would bleach the bones. He was dumping bodies in a landscape that's literally designed to hide secrets.
And this went on for over a decade. He was living this complete double life, baking bread in the morning, hunting women in the afternoon, until June 13th, 1983.
The day the House of Cards began to fall. And that brings us to Cindy Paulson.
Cindy was 17 years old. I think it's really important to emphasize that. She was a child, essentially, even though she was working as a sex worker on the streets of Anchorage.
She was vulnerable, and that's what he looked for. Hansen approached her, offered her $200 for sex, and she got into his car. But almost immediately, the dynamic shifted.
You called the gun.
He pulled a .357 Magnum. The client disappeared, and the monster came out.
He took her to his house in Muldoon. And what happened there is just incredibly disturbing. He chained her to a post in his den.
He tortured her. He raped her repeatedly. He kept her there for hours. But then we see this moment of just staggering arrogance from him. After terrorizing her, Robert Hansen decides to take a nap.
He went to sleep.
He went to sleep on the couch while she was still chained up. It just shows how little he feared her. He saw her as an object, something totally secure in his possession. He was just resting up for the final hunt.
So when he wakes up, he tells her they're going to his shack in the valley.
Right. He loads her into his car to drive to the airfield, and this is the moment where Cindy Paulson saves her own life.
She's handcuffed in the backseat of his car. They get to Merrill Field. Hansen gets out to prep the Super Cub. He's distracted, moving gear around, checking the plane.
He thinks she's paralyzed with fear and physically restrained. He's not worried about her at all.
But she wasn't paralyzed.
She was terrified, of course, but she was fighting. She somehow managed to crawl out of the back seat while his back was turned, and as she ran, she did something that criminal profilers still talk about to this day.
The blue sneakers.
She kicked off her blue sneakers and left them right there, next to his car.
Why did she do that? What was the thinking there?
It was a conscious decision to leave a marker, to leave evidence. She knew that if he caught her or if she disappeared forever, those shoes would be physical proof that she had been there. It was this desperate, brilliant breadcrumb.
So she's running barefoot across the tarmac, handcuffed, screaming, trying to get to 6th Avenue.
Hansen spots her. He panics. The control is gone. He runs after her with the gun, but she reaches the road. She flags down a passing truck driver, a man named Robert Yount.
And we have to give all the credit in the world to Robert Yount here. He sees a girl in handcuffs screaming for her life. And he slams on the brakes. He stops.
He absolutely saved her life, no question. Hansen saw the truck stop and he knew the game was up. He retreated. Yount drove Cindy to the Big Timber Motel, which was nearby, and they called the police.
Okay, so you would think this is the end of the story. Police arrive. They find a handcuffed girl who says Robert Hansen kidnapped me. They see the cuffs and they go arrest him. Case closed.
But that is not what happened.
No.
And this brings us right back to the bias we talked about earlier. The police arrived at the motel. They found Cindy. She's hysterical. She's still in the handcuffs. She tells them everything. The torture, the plane. She identifies Hansen by name.
But when they go to talk to Hansen
is calm. He's cool. He's Bob the baker. He admits he was with her, but he claims she was trying to extort him. He flips the story completely. He claims she was the unstable one.
And he had an alibi.
He had an alibi. A friend named John Henning, who vouched for him, said he was with him.
And the police believed him over a 17-year-old girl they found in handcuffs.
They believed the respectable married business owner over the teenage sex worker. They actually let him go. They didn't search his car. They didn't search his plane, not initially. They viewed it as a he said, she said, and they just defaulted to trusting the man with the social status.
It just makes my blood boil. She did everything right. She escaped. She left the shoes as evidence. She told the truth. And because of who she was, they didn't believe her.
It's a total tragedy of credibility. But thankfully, the story doesn't end there because there was a detective working in the shadows who wasn't so quick to just dismiss all of this.
Detective Glenn Floth.
Yeah.
Alaska State Troopers.
Floth was working on a totally different angle. He had been looking at several bodies that had been found out in the wilderness over the years. A woman they dubbed Eklutna Annie, found in 1980, another named Joanna Messina, and another Sherry Morrow.
And Fluth had a theory that these weren't just random, unrelated murders.
Right. He saw the pattern, the remote locations, the way the bodies were discarded. He suspected a serial predator was at work. And when he heard about the Cindy Paulson incident, even though the Anchorage PD had basically shelved it, he saw the connection. But he needed more than just a hunch.
So he called in the cavalry. He reached out to the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit at Quantico.
Specifically, he contacted Special Agent John Douglas. And for any true crime fans listening, it's legendary. Douglas is one of the fathers of modern criminal profiling.
So Floth sends the case files to Quantico and asks for a profile.
He does. And what John Douglas sent back was practically a photograph of Robert Hansen. I mean, it wasn't just vague guesses.
No, it was chillingly specific.
Douglas looked at the victimology, the geography of the body dumps, and he deduced the following. The killer would be an experienced hunter. He would have very low self-esteem, but a massive ego. He would have a history of rejection by women. He would be compelled to keep souvenirs like jewelry to relive the crimes.
But there was one detail, one specific detail in that profile that made everyone's jaw just drop.
The stutter. Douglas predicted the killer would have a speech impediment.
How? I mean, how on earth does someone look at a crime scene photo of a shallow grave in the woods and figure out the killer stutters?
It comes down to the psychology of the attack itself. Douglas reasoned that the killer's need for absolute total dominance and the specific way he silenced his victims, it suggested a man who felt completely unable to communicate effectively in the real world. He theorized that the killer felt socially impotent, and a speech impediment is a common driver of that specific type of insecurity and rage.
No, so Floth gets this profile. He's reading down the list. Experienced hunter. Check. Owns a plane. Check.
Yeah.
Low self-esteem. Check. Keeps souvenirs. Plausible. Stutters.
It was a lightning bolt.
He must have realized immediately. It's the baker.
That profile gave Floth the ammunition he desperately needed to go to a judge and get a search warrant, despite Hansen's sterling public reputation. So on October 27, 1983, the troopers and the FBI descended on Hansen's world.
They searched everything.
Yeah.
The plane, the cars, the house, and the evidence they found was overwhelming.
They found the jewelry, the souvenirs that Douglas predicted. They were hidden away in the attic, necklaces, IDs, earrings belonging to women who were known to be missing.
And they found the murder weapon.
The Ruger Mini 14. And ballistics eventually matched it to the bullets they'd recovered from the bodies. The case was solidifying, but then they found something else in his bedroom. Something that, to me, is the single most terrifying object in this entire case.
The map.
The map.
Describe it for us. What did they find?
Hidden behind the headboard of his bed, they found an aviation chart, a map of the area surrounding Anchorage. And on that map, Hansen had drawn little X marks, small, precise, hand-drawn X's.
How many were on there?
There were 37 X's.
37.
It was a scorecard, a secret diary of death that he slept just inches away from every single night. It is the ultimate symbol of his compartmentalization. His wife slept in that bed, completely unaware that right behind her head was a document detailing the murders of dozens of women.
Seeing that map must have just changed everything for the investigators. They weren't looking for a guy who killed 3 or 4 people anymore.
No, it completely redefined the scale of the horror. They realized in that moment that they were dealing with a monster of historic proportions.
So we really need to take some time now to talk about the women. The women represented by those X's. Because 17 confessed murders and 37 marks on a map, that's a number that can feel abstract. But each one of those was a human being with a life and a story.
Absolutely. We have to humanize the statistics. Let's talk about Eklutna Annie. That's the name investigators gave to the first body they discovered back in 1980 near Eklutna Road.
And to this day, we still don't know her real name, do we?
We don't. She is still unidentified. Hansen confessed to killing her. He claims she was his first murder victim, although the timeline on that is a bit fuzzy. He admitted to stabbing her in the back as she tried to run away from him, but she remains nameless. Just a Jane Doe in a cold grave somewhere.
And then there was Sherry Morrow.
Sherry was 23. Her case, it really reveals the depth of Hansen's twisted rituals. Her body was found in a shallow grave near the Nick River. She'd been hunted down and shot with the Mini 14. But when the investigators analyzed the scene, they found something very bizarre.
She was fully clothed.
She was fully clothed, but there were no bullet holes in her clothing.
Which can only mean one thing.
It means she was naked when he shot her. And then, after he killed her, Robert Hansen took the time to carefully dress her corpse before he buried her.
That is so deeply disturbing. It's like he was trying to fix his toy after he broke it.
It just speaks to his need for control extending even beyond death. He wanted to control the final image of the victim. It's chilling.
We also have to remember Paula Golding.
Paula was 30 years old, and by Hansen's own account, she fought him. She didn't just run, she struggled with him. He shot her while she was fleeing. And Andrea Fish Altairi.
She was nicknamed Fish because she always wore a fish necklace.
That's right. And Hansen took her to the Nick Armbridge, and he kept that necklace. It was one of the items, one of the souvenirs they found in the attic stash.
This is also the case of Celia Van Zanten. It's a bit different.
It is. Authorities believe she might have been the actual first victim way back in 1971. She froze to death. Now, Hansen always denied killing her, but there was an X on that map that matched her location perfectly.
And that brings up a really important issue about his confession, doesn't it? Even when he was caught, even when he was finally talking, he was still trying to manipulate the narrative.
Constantly. He steadfastly refused to admit to killing any women who weren't sex workers. For example, there were 2 women, Megan Emmerich and Mary Phil. There were X's on the map in the locations near Seward where they disappeared, but Hansen denied them to his dying day.
Why? Why confess to 17 but draw the line at those 2?
It was all part of his internal justification system. In his warped, infantile mind, killing sex workers was somehow different. He could rationalize it to himself as cleaning up the streets.
A form of vigilantism.
Exactly. But admitting to killing innocent women, in his view, would destroy that delusion. It would force him to admit that he was just a psychopath who killed indiscriminately, not some kind of twisted moral crusader.
It's a final insult to the victims and their families. Even in the end, he was picking and choosing which lives counted.
It just shows that infantile personality, diagnosed decades earlier, remained right until the very end. He could not accept full responsibility for the reality of what he had done.
So how did the endgame finally play out? They have the map, the gun, the jewelry. They confront him with all of it.
At first, he denied everything. He played the outraged citizen. How dare you accuse me? The whole performance. But the physical evidence was just insurmountable. The ballistics match on the rifle was the nail in the coffin. And when they finally laid out that map in front of him, he knew it was over.
And he made a deal.
He did. He pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree homicide for Morrow, Messina, Goulding, and Eklutna Annie. He did this for 2 main reasons: to avoid a high-profile, humiliating public trial, and to ensure he served his time in a federal prison rather than a state prison.
But the police had a condition. A very important one.
Critical condition. He had to help them decipher the map. He had to physically go with the police in helicopters and point out where the bodies were buried.
Just imagine that scene. Sitting in a helicopter next to the man who hunted women in these same woods, watching him point down at the ground and say, "There, I buried one there."
It must have been a gruesome, surreal process. They did manage to recover 12 bodies that way, but many were never found. The wilderness had reclaimed them forever.
He was sentenced to 461 years. Plus life without the possibility of parole.
A sentence designed to ensure he would never, ever breathe free air again. He was sent to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania initially, but was eventually transferred back to Alaska to serve his time at Spring Creek Correctional Center in Seward.
And that's where he stayed until August 24th, 2014.
He died of natural causes at the age of 75. A quiet, banal end for a man who had caused such explosive, unimaginable pain.
His legacy, for better or worse, lives on in pop culture. I mean, the movie The Frozen Ground, with John Cusack as Hansen and Nicolas Cage as the detective, brought this whole story to a global audience.
It did. And you see echoes of his MO in shows like Criminal Minds and Law and Order. That idea of hunting humans just taps into a very primal, deep-seated fear. It strips away all the protections of civilization. It's the ultimate nightmare scenario.
So as we wrap this up, let's try to synthesize what we've learned. What's the big takeaway from the Robert Hansen story?
For me, it's a terrifying lesson on the danger of compartmentalization. Here was a man who could genuinely bake a cake for a neighbor's birthday in the morning, and then go out and murder a woman in the afternoon. And that map behind his headboard is the perfect chilling symbol of that. He built this wall between his 2 lives, and because he was Bob the Baker, society helped him keep that wall standing.
It also just screams about the catastrophic failure of the justice system to take violence against women seriously, especially women on the margins of society. If they had just locked them up in 1971 for that abduction and rape,
Countless lives would have been saved.
all those X's would never have been drawn.
The infantile personality was dangerous, yes, but the system's indifference was the catalyst that allowed it to just explode into this decade-long reign of terror.
And we have to circle back one last time to Cindy Paulson. She really is the hero of this story.
Without a doubt. She was 17, she was terrified, she was tortured, but she had the presence of mind to leave those sneakers behind. She had the courage to flag down that truck. Without her, the X's on that map just would have kept multiplying. She stopped a monster in his tracks.
But, and this is the thought that I think I want to leave our listeners with, the map had 37 X's. We have 17 confessions. 12 bodies recovered with his help.
And that is the haunting reality of this case. Robert Hansen took secrets to the grave. There are almost certainly still bodies out there, lost in the vastness of the Alaskan wilderness. Women whose families are still waiting, still wondering.
Who are the other X's? We may never know. It's a chilling reminder that even when justice is served, the truth isn't always fully recovered.
It's a dark shadow that still hangs over that beautiful wild landscape.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, look out for one another, and please stay safe. We'll see you next time.